B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzach. We're up to chapter 8 in the Alie Shur, the third. Here he's writing, Yeshiva Bachers wrote him letters, and this is the third letter that he's responding to. It's very interesting how you should have a social life, how a person that's life is based on Torah should have a social life. So he says over there in the first paragraph, he had written another letter, how to regard jealousy in life, right? How to deal with jealousy and how to know your self-value. Now he's going to the topic of, because in every social setting there's leaders, there's followers, there's bullies.
Yeah,
so, in every social, so we're reading it. We're going to the second paragraph. He says, you with me? So he says, part of Musar, a very important part of Judaism, is to find yourself. Actually, there's a very important Maharal. It says some people think there's only two relationships, between us and God and us and our fellow, but there's actually three relationships, the Maharal says, between you and yourself. Some people don't love themselves. They don't take care of themselves. You understand? So he says, he says, how do you deal with your friend? He says, some people, this is a big problem actually, you should know. It's sad. Some kids, they don't fit into a social circle, and then they're rejected, and it's very important the yeshiva that you go to, or that the people accept you. When they don't accept you, it's very hard, because you need a social life, So he says, sometimes you don't find your place in the social circle of friends. And he says, this yeshiva bacher was in pain and suffering because of that. So he wants to help him through the psychology of Torah, right? How you could have good relationship and fit in to a group of good friends. He says, first of all, third paragraph, he says, he says, always you're going to have a show-off in every social circle. People that are a little bit snobby, right? And sometimes it's hard to tolerate these people, right? Because they're full of themselves. But he says that, so how do you do? Let's say that you're in especially in a small yeshiva, one of the leaders of the group is a show-off. So you're just going to go become a hermit? The Torah, that's not the Torah way. A good friend is more precious than a brother, I tell you, right now I'm recording because of my friend Rabbi Matos. He dozen times said you have to record. And this last year I had 41,000 views on my YouTube channel. So it's a good, a good friend really is more precious than anything in life. So he says, just because somebody, you know what I mean? Let's say somebody in your social circle is a show-off and you really can't stand him. What are you supposed to do with such people? It's not that you can't have a social life, but and he says that's not the right choice, right? I tell you, there was in Balchuvas, there's somebody, he's one of the wealthiest people in Baltimore. Just to show you, Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, my brother-in-law, Rabbi Yehuda Moradian in Baltimore, he said, it's very important to wear all white. So one of the most respected Kabbalists that I saw with my own eyes, the Hasidic Rebbe, I'm learning Kabbalah from Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, he doesn't wear all white. So my brother-in-law ate Shabbat dinner with him. He asked him why. He says it's important not to stand out. It's important to fit in. So there's this guy, he's a very good guy, very wealthy guy, gave hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to tzedakah, but he was Yemenite, and he would make his kids do weird stuff that were when you're in a community that doesn't have so many stardom like Baltimore, it's not like they had 50 Sephardim rituals. His kids were not fit in, and all of them went off the derech. He's very religious himself. But it's very important to be able to click with your friends and have good friends and have a social life, because either you're going to have good friends or bad friends, right?
Yeah.
Either your friends are going to take you down or take you up. So you have to be able to fit in. So he's trying to explain about this. He says, he says the person that wants to show off is coming from the same psychological root in his neshama that is jealousy comes from. He says somebody that's at peace with himself and knows his own self-value, he doesn't have to be snobby and try to put other people down and like try to be superior, right? It's coming from a lack of self-confidence and self-value. Same thing if you're jealous. If you're jealous, you don't know how valuable you are. So he says, he says, and that this guy, he's very dependent on other people saying, oh, you're the best. That's why he's trying to like show off that other people pay attention to him. He says that more important than anybody else is you always have to love yourself and know your self-value. Once you exude confidence in your decisions, then other people will follow. You understand? He says that's why we have it's a very interesting Mishnah in Masechet Edyot. You with me, Eitan? The next paragraph. It says L'umat zeh. This is actually one of the most famous parts of the whole Talmud, the whole Mishnah is. It says Ma'asecha yikarvucha, Ma'asecha yicharkucha, yirachuka. It means actions speak greater than words. So it says, if you want to be known as a great person, you don't need to show off. Actions speak greater than words. When you're a good friend, and when your friend needs a favor, and you're there for him, that's going to be a million times from you trying to make people like you by showing off or being jealous, and not having. Means my Rosh Hashiva actually once said. It said one time the Pirkei Avot says, "What's the best thing that takes you to Olam Haba?" Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said. So one said, "Good." Right. So one said, "Ayin tova, shachen tov." So he said maybe it means shachen tov, good neighbor or good friend, chaver tov, doesn't mean that you have to go find one. Maybe you be one, right? He says. He says, if you're altruistic, if in a group of friends you volunteer to help others, he says, don't worry. And you're not looking to show off, you're not looking for, people to acknowledge you, that itself is going to make people like you. You understand? Because when people see that you're a valuable thing, you're not selfish, then intrinsically people that have a brain and are not superficial are going to say, wow, this is a valuable guy. He's not always thinking about himself. He's what? Willing to sacrifice for others. He says, Azor la'acherim. Always help others. If they ever need if your social group ever needs somebody to volunteer to help get something on, like a Shabbaton or, or a thing, you always be the one that volunteers. Then automatically, inevitably, you're going to become a leader. Because you're not just trying to talk the talk, you're walking the walk. And by the thing, people are going to be, see that you're confident and you're a giver, Remember every time you were learning the Rav Desser? Giver and taker. So people automatically are always like to be under the flag of a giver because they see as a valuable asset, And you're not doing it for the fame and glory, You're just doing it because that's the right thing to do. Right? Like in every shul, you need a gabbai. In every social circle, you need somebody that's expert in certain things. Like somebody knows computers. Like in my own life, like sometimes, even anytime in your life, whether you're 80, 85, 20, 30, 40, 60, some person knows real estate. So he's a good friend. You need real estate advice, you go to him, Somebody's good in accounting, you go to him. Somebody's good in, Torah. So he says, yeshiva, there's so many golden opportunities to be at public service. Like Eitan here, he's our Baal Korah. He reads the Torah for us every week. Or Nate is like the Gabbai, right? So he says in yeshiva also, you want to be respected and loved and cherished, you don't have to show off. go volunteer to be a gabbai, be a, you know.
Be proactive.
Like right in this Kenisa right now, we have in the big shul, we have a big problem. When there's a special event, we have nobody to talk. And you saw that a few weeks ago. We have nobody that Mr. Saraf of God bless memory, Agad Alvud used to do that. It means if you're proactive, you don't want to lazy enough, you're to do something. There's always a rabbi. There's something to do. And same thing social circle. You always, which means, and that's going to be so many value. That's going to be so much make you so value to that social circle that it's going to attract good friends to you. In life, you can't wait. That's what we're learning in Saz Yeshayim Zezut. You can't wait for good luck to come to you. You be the creator of good luck. So he says, right in the middle, Eitan. You don't have to push and try to force your way into being a gabbai. But if you see, like that was like one of the things that my father of this memory says, right? When nobody's willing to step up to the plate to get the community done, so you could go to the old gabbai or the rabbi or Rosh Yeshiva or Mashkech and say, I'm at service here. If you ever need me to be a gabbai or do anything, volunteer for the yeshiva, I'm here. I'm at your service. Right? It's not like trying to be bossy and, you know. And it says, it says that's a very good thing. You should know in the philosophy of the Musar movement, Rav Yisrael Salanter talks about this. It's very important to be a good public servant. Ish Siburi. He says if you're somebody that the whole it's a whole long essay he has on this. Rav Yisrael Salanter and Rav Volbi also has in his second volume. He says if you're a person that people need you, you get sick less. Like Chas v'Shalom, even if you had a thing that you should die, Hashem's not going to kill you because other people don't deserve. You understand? Because when Hashem's Hashem's judgment is perfect, which means all the people that are going to affect it also need to deserve for this person to be like Chas v'Shalom, go out of service. So if they don't deserve it and you're affecting.
It's like when a judge says this guy goes to jail for the service, he doesn't go by the key.
Exactly.
To be affected.
But Hashem does. So it says, if you do gabbai, your public service work, like a clockwork, very seriously and responsibly, and you're on time, like the Santa Monica virus that's going around.
Santa Monica.
So it says, Kim yafoch niu kadet matal bidu avodas matare yotz scharo ifsado. Hu yarchok et ha'amim mechana ruchanit v'otech v'testabik v'stochot ma'bekach. So he says here, one second, I don't understand what he's saying here. So he's just saying this is a double-edged sword. He says sometimes you shouldn't be too good-hearted, Eitan, which means if you're the gabbai, then don't go take it overboard, and if you're in yeshiva, go sign up for shmira and hatzala, you know, because then he's saying you have to know what you're anchored for. Especially before you're married, you have a lot more time to learn. You know what I mean? So your roots have to be in finishing as much as shas and halacha and, you know, thing as possible. Because if you then, because it could get to your head, because it's like sometimes, a lot of times when you do this volunteer, they honor you. So he says, then I'll go become part of Shmira and Hatzalah and I'll join this volunteer group and that volunteer group then. You know, because he says always everybody has a certain taiva. So he says when you become a yeshiva bacher, your yetzer hara becomes more sophisticated. It's not going to want to go do gluttony and dirty stuff, but what it's going to want to do sometimes is, you know, go after more honor. Chacham Ben Sion writes this. Like the yetzer hara for a rav, a person that's a Talmid Chacham, is not so much to do dirty, right? Like animalistic nerve endings, like gluttony and sexual, but it's more like, they should respect me. So he said, it's good to volunteer, but know what the ikar is, what the tafel is.
Ikar and tafel is what?
Ikar is the main and the secondary.
Oh.
So it said, Shuv lo iket bimcha ki ben Torah. So he says, so that's what he's saying here. He's saying sometimes the Rabbi Ben Sion Abba Shaul talks about this idea that the more holy and sophisticated you get, Torah knowledge goes up, your Satan also becomes more sophisticated. Right? If you're like somebody that's just Baal Tshuva, just trying to keep Shabbat and learn like 1 minute Torah a day, your Yetzirah is on a very low level. It's
What way?
no, because there's a concept called Zeh Ze'uma Zeh Elokim. Like I was telling you on Shabbat. There always needs to be equilibrium. So when you're on a low level, your Satan is actually, who has a bigger Yetzirah?
I would feel like someone who, if you learn more Torah, you're able to, get more knowledge on how to overcome it.
I know, but I know, you have more knowledge how to, but your thing becomes much more sophisticated. It becomes
cunning,
more cunning. You understand? Because then, let's say, Matthew, like this. When your Torah knowledge goes very, very high, your Yetzirah is also going to have to go very high. So it'd be what? On the same level. Because if your Yetzirah stays low, then you're not going to get what?
The challenge.
Any more challenge or reward. Why do you deserve it? You of course. Which means it comes out that Rishaim have a less Yetzirah than Tzadikim. That's a Gemara. Sukkah, Daf Nun Bet. When Mashiach comes, they're going to cry. Because the Tzadikim, the Yetzirah is going to look like a thick rope. Like a mountain. To the thing is just going to look like a pebble. They're going to cry, they're going to cry. They say, the Tzadikim are going to cry. He says, this was Mount Everest, this Yetzirah. How did I climb? Defeat him. And then the thing is going to say, this was such a thin rope. How did I not break through it? You understand? So this is what he's saying. He's saying, don't take the volunteer thing overboard. You also have to know, especially before you're married, once you're married, it's much like today I was 2 hours in carpool, even on a Sunday. Because I had to go and I had to take my daughter driving. She has to get her driver's license, But before you're married, he's saying it's good to be a volunteer, but before you're married, don't go volunteer for 50 different things and then you don't learn a word anymore. You become an ignoramus, right? He says, so he says, oh wow, this is a beautiful pshat. It was worth it to come tonight just to hear this. He says, what does it mean the greater you become? Your Yetzirah becomes greater. It means your Yetzirah becomes more spiritual, which means a low life. I'm very sorry to be graphic, but this morning it's Shovavim. You have to do tshuva for all the sexual sins. So I was teaching him Even Ha'ezer, how it says in Shulchan Aruch, you can listen to it, I'll send it to you. It says you have to go far, far, far away from women. So it says that a low life, he has thing to go to an X-rated club or not, or go sleep with a prostitute. Somebody that has Torahs doesn't have that. What does it mean that? What does it mean that his Yetzirah is greater? It means he says his Yetzirah is more sophisticated, is more spiritual. He has the Yetzirah that they should honor me. I'm a rabbi. I'm a Talmid Chacham. My sister and brother and my cousins should. You understand? So the Yetzirah is not over animalistic, low-life things. It's over, and that's also wrong. Because if you learn Torah, you're learning it from Hashem, not for people to honor you. So you understand, it gets more. He said that's a good pshat. He says Rav Wolbe in Kol HaGadol Mechaver. So Rabbi Ben Sion Abba Shaul also writes this, the great Sephardic Rosh Hashiva, that he says, once you become a Torah scholar, you shouldn't fall into the trap and expect everybody to bow down to you and respect you.
Stand up when you walk in the room.
Stand back and walk in, because it says actually Torah should make you more humble. They should. People should appreciate your Torah knowledge, but if you're doing it for the whole,
shouldn't be your main.
If you're doing it for the kavod, just for the thing, then you've missed the boat. The Satan has won. That's what it's saying. The Satan is going to be replaced. You understand? It goes from low life things to more. I'm jealous. They didn't respect me enough. They didn't acknowledge. You understand? That's what it means. Okay, last paragraph. It says, nitzad hasheni chayav ben Torah la'akpid al atzmo v'al avato. It says, that you should be humble and not after thing. He says, of course, you should be very clean. You should know. One of the greatest yeshivas that created almost every single Rosh Yeshiva, including Rav Shach and Rav Aaron Kotler and Rav Ruderman, and it was this Alter of Slobodka, Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, and he was saying, God the Adam, the yeshiva had a tailor. Like he would force every yeshiva bacher to get a new black hat every year. Because he said, not that you're doing it for... We just learned in Gemara Tanit, actually. I'm 2 weeks behind the daf. It says, Melech b'yofyov tachzenecha. You know, the Jewish king every day has to get a haircut, like get groomed. The Kohen Gadol once a week. A regular Kohen once a month. So, it's saying, not that you're out to be a show-off for people to respect you, but you should also be very... Because there's a Gemara in Shabbat. It says if a Talmid Chacham on his outer garment has like a booger or like a dirty, like is sloppy, is chayav mitah. From heaven, he has a death sentence. Because Talmidei Chachamim are our royal spiritual princes, right?
Or represent Hashem.
They're living Torah. It's covered at Torah. Like my Rebbe once said, I'll tell you this, one important thing I learned from my Rebbe, Reb Tzvi Shlita, he said that there's a concept, Kavod Torah is more important than the Torah itself. You know that? To respect Torah is more important than Torah itself. You know what the biggest proof to this is? When Rav Ovadia Yosef was nifter, almost every single Sephardim yeshiva in the world that was near in Israel closed down. So you literally had like 200,000 people that were going to learn the Torah the whole day. The whole day they had to go by bus to be at the funeral. Why isn't? But their whole day of learning Torah went down the drain. So maybe it was just sufficient for 10,000 people to go. Why was it sufficient? Almost 1 million people were there. So it's because you see from here to honor Torah is more important than Torah itself. And this is very important, especially for the Persian. You know what happened was the Reformed Jews, the enlightened Jews that were really trying to make everybody secular, they would say, why? It's like the same thing. Molaito. So the Alter of Slobodka, his genius, wanted to make the yeshiva bacher be impeccably GQ quality. So he said that they should be all clean shaven. And like even in Eretz Yisrael, the mashgiach was from the Mir of David Klornglass. The kids that would go to John Hopkins or Loyola to night college, he would make them be very clean shaven, even during Sefirat HaOmer, because he said we have to, since they have a stigma to think that if you're religious you're dirty and sloppy, we have to go to the polar opposite. So, but it's a Gemara, it's a scary Gemara, page 114 in Shabbat. It says a Talmid Chacham, Torah scholar, that his outside clothing is sloppy and has like, food stains and different stains on it, is chayav mitah. It's avos to Rab Nosson, actually.
Chayav mitah is what?
Like from heaven, he has a death sentence. God is so mad at him. Actually, it's in Avot de Rabbi Natan also. That says, why do Talmidei Chachamim, some Torah scholars, die young? Because he says they don't respect themselves and they're sloppy, and Hashem doesn't like it. So it says, and parenthetically, Rav Aaron Kotler, the founder of the biggest yeshiva in America, said everybody that learning yeshiva should treat himself as a Talmid Chacham. You know why? Because in America there's so little religious people. Once you went to yeshiva, like you know this very well, they think already you're a rabbi, you're a Talmid Chacham. You understand? So he says, Rabbi. So it says, it says, if you don't have self-respect, like if you would eat pizza in the middle of a shuk, in the middle of like a bazaar, the middle of the street, you can't be a kosher witness anymore. Because what? You have to be dignified when you eat like a man. Sakenissim, you're not like a dog to eat in the middle of nowhere. Eating, you have to say bracha, you have to say netilah. If you just eat in the middle of the street, you're not a kosher witness anymore. Because we're worried about your integrity. Because we're saying, since you're not worried about your self-honor, and you just shame yourself, you eat like an animal in front of everybody, when you're supposed to sit on a table in private and eat, maybe you're not going to care to be exact in your words and you're going to lie. It's halacha. Did you know that? One of the things that makes you invalid witness is eating in public. Not like a drink or like actual food, like bread. It's disrespectful. So it says, that's the Gemara in Kedushin, and it's in the Rambam, Hilchot Edut, the end of chapter 5. It says a person should be well groomed and clean, right? It says obviously you shouldn't become like you don't need to be a GQ model and always like be obsessed with your looks, but you have to be presentable. It's called what? Being presentable, because you respect the Torah. You're a representative of the Torah, which is the most glorious thing. And he says, what's real honor? What's real honor? This is so glorious. It says, where you sit, like let's say I sit at the top of the shul, right? Right? And I'm facing everybody. It says, the place doesn't make the person respected and honorable, but the person has to be so valuable and honorable and noble that wherever he sits, that place becomes what? A place that's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Honorable.
No matter where he sits.
Yaru shakhsi, exactly. Which means his integrity, his character is so sterling and so noble and so refined. شخصیتش انقدر بالاست و خوب بالاست که هر جا بشینه اونجا احترام پذیره. You understand? You know, he's just so refined. He doesn't say dirty words like these. Sometimes I have to. Thank God I don't do it anymore. But I used to be a manager of a lot of different apartment buildings. I had to rent it out. The guy's like, you look at his credit report. The guy's making like a lot of money. The guy's like a doctor. He's coming to rent like a very expensive house. Every other word is an F-bomb. What kind of people are these? They're low. You're talking like the gutter. People have lost any self-respect or the way they, or the women. Is in the middle of the winter, they dress like animal.
They're ready to go to the beach.
It's disgusting. He says that the Torah scholar always knows his self-worth, and he always acts. He's so noble that wherever he sits, that place becomes a noble seat of royalty.
The Midas touch.
Exactly. He says, "Mabed chiyuvi kol adam v'kol sheifah lirot b'chol davar asad chiyuvi l'shtadel la'amid kol davar b'makom ha'nachon." He says it's very important in Torah knowledge to be orderly. You understand? To put everything in its right place. Don't be mishmash mishuga. It says, "Beli hafraza zeu geshav von Talmid Chacham." He says that's a true Talmid Chacham. He's organized. He's clean. He's presentable. He's Zeu Eizeu Mechubad Mechlet Biriot. And also, he says, who's a truly honorable person? It says Pirkei Avot, one that respects
himself,
others. So if you want to be respected, what do? You respect others, and then the social circle will follow.